Hello there, how are you all doing? I've just been watching John Cullen's series. Breaking down the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Ian Carroll last time on the Las Vegas shooting. Now, first of all, John, Mr. Cullen, it's fantastic to see you back. I don't know if you remember any of our interactions. I don't know if you've watched any of my videos, to be perfectly fair. So you might not recognise me. But we were introduced by Alex Thompson from UK Colin. We had several email exchanges during the pandemic to do with the 1918 flu, several other things. I don't know if you remember. If you don't, you don't. If you do, you do. It's neither here nor there, but well, welcome back anyway. John's been one of the most thorough and, I dare say, impartial investigators there are on the internet at the moment. I think he worked for Johns Hopkins at one point. Right, now, I'm not even going to attempt, right, to... What was I doing? Oh yeah, I was explaining who he was. He worked for Johns Hopkins and he helped develop their pandemic tracking map, I think that was it. But it was a very useful tool anyway during the COVID era, as you could track the amount of deaths, etc., in every city around the world. And that was what John was instrumental in creating. But that's not what he's best known for. It's his investigative work in regards to certain events that are anomalous, shall we say, to say the least. One of those is the Las Vegas shooting, where a man, supposedly Stephen Paddock, killed 58 people, I think it was, firing down on a crowd at a music festival in Las Vegas. Now, I'm not even going to try and explain to you what John concluded, because I don't want to make any mistakes and lead you down the wrong path. Needless to say, I will in a second play you a clip of just one of the things that John has found and brought to light that are very strange. Okay?
I believe we aren't entirely clear because we have some helicopter footage, we have some body cam footage, and we have this bullshit narrative. I believe that the window in the other suite was broken out. And I think that we have that on the helicopter footage.
I'm on Convention Center. Is it this bus?
Yeah, it's an open line with a female saying there's recruiting. Female saying there's recruiting.
It's over there. It's over there. It's over there. It's over there. Control, that is correct. Shots. Shots fired. Shots fired. Shots fired. Shots fired. Shots fired. Shots fired from Mandalay Bay. Shots fired. Shots fired. Control, that is correct. Shots fired from Mandalay Bay. There's many people down. Stage left.
Stay on this side. Can you cover? Stay with them. Coming from. Somebody in the CP, can you tell me where it's coming from? Let's get that fucking call.
And I think you can kind of see it, like, it's a little hard to make it out and like some of the photos taken from the ground that night, but there are some HD photos where you can kind of make out that it looks like there is kind of a broken window in the other room.
Now, this isn't the only thing he's investigated. There's also COVID, like I mentioned. There's a very high likelihood that the virus that was introduced into the US wasn't the COVID virus. In fact, in every nation, it was different. And this is likely due to the fact that what they had already created wasn't effective enough, shall we say. In many nations, they just did a psychological variant of the virus. But in the US particularly, they used an altered version of the 1918 flu that they discovered in Alaska in 2007, I think. And they discovered it in Alaska, in the lungs of World War I soldiers, and then started doing gain of function experiments on it in 2011. And this was something that John actually came up with, and I tend to agree. There was also a psychological component which we both agreed on, and this was evidenced by several figures around the world explaining how this process was done, one of which being the Belgian swine flu czar for 2011, when swine flu was being pushed out, and the Belgian minister that was involved with that was on record at Chatham House doing a lecture, basically telling it how to fudge the figures to create compliance for a vaccine. So we had this kind of sort of mutual understanding of where each other was coming from, and both scenarios were very plausible. So yeah, as you could see by his work on the Las Vegas shooting, I'll leave a link in the description below to his channel. It's I Am John Hoover, it's called. And his work is, like I said, just exceptional. He's also done the Butler assassination attempt by Thomas Crook on Trump, determined that it was the second shooter. He's been getting a lot of traction lately. And as well as Charlie Kirk, he's actually looked at the Charlie Kirk shooting, and his ideas are more plausible than anyone else's, really, and they don't involve Israel, unsurprisingly. But he has been getting a lot of traction lately, and he's also been mentioned in Congress a couple of times by a couple of officials there. And this is what concerns me. although this is an extra credits episode for my PSYWAR series, this goes out to you, John. We helped each other in the past. I regard you as a very credible source. You're honest. You're very thorough, pragmatic, objective. So I trust you, which is a rarity in my case. Now, I know this is a big ask because I know how pig-headed, stubborn, obstinate, standoffish, a bit aggressive you can be when it's something you truly believe in. Like a pit bull that's got hold of a child's arm, you won't let go. But I'm asking you to trust me. If you remember who I am, then you'll know you can. Ian Carroll going on Tucker Carlson's show talking about you wasn't an accident. You're being singled out. Tried the same thing with me before the Butler shooting. Thomas Crooks was talking to a guy called Willie Tepesh on Telegram and on Facebook and on a few other sites. Willie Tepesh, the same Willie Tepesh, was a member of supposedly NRM, which is a Nordic resistance movement, and a very, very devout Nazi. That was his persona. NRM are a CIA invention. They're part of the Gladio program. If you'll probably understand what I mean when I say Gladio. You understand the evolution that it went through and the steps that it goes through to insert sleeper insurgent groups within nations. This has been an ongoing UK and US program for nearly 100 years now. Pardon me. Willie Tepesh was part of that NRM movement, so he said. He wasn't. It was intelligence. It was intel. That was just a persona that he laid out. He wasn't an agent. It was an asset, should I say. You'll know the difference between a case officer, which is an agent, and an asset, which is just freelance. Yeah. This was because of the stuff that I was exposing, not only about the bloodlines that run the world. We can get onto that another time. It makes me sound crazy, but full transparency here. Yeah, I know exactly why they were doing this, and also because of my work exposing the DIC, which is another faction. It is now anyway, and this was a faction, a clique within the CIA and MI6 that was born from the Gladio program. Under their control, they have the CIA's Special Activities Centre, the same one that Joe Kent worked for and headed their specialist unit, their paramilitary unit, which is called Red Cell. We have an equivalent in the UK called E-Squadron. Both of them are special operations, yeah, are literally military units, but are turned into paramilitary to work behind enemy lines. They are taught to think and act like terrorists. Their main purpose is to create insurgencies, rebellions, uprisings, factions, yeah, within the nation that they are tasked. their specialisation, their specialist subject, I suppose you could call it, are false flag operations. And this includes not just bombings, yeah, and the killing of civilians, but also assassinations of key figures. I think you can see where I'm going with this. Joe Kent headed that unit, Red Cell. They are implicitly taught psychological warfare and propaganda, and psychological propaganda. That is their main purpose, to conduct operations within an enemy nation. In the background now, you'll be seeing a CIA document called Psychological Operations in Guerrilla Warfare and Guerrilla Warfare. And this is one of the playbooks that are used to lay out how to do these operations within a nation, to set up opposing groups to descend a nation into chaos. They will use pro-government, anti-government. Let's use that as an example. Yeah. They will propagandise each side using the equivalent in the US, which is the counter and disinformation unit, yeah, the CIA. It was headed by Robert David Steele at one point, very famous in the Q crowd. I wonder why that is. And in the UK we have an equivalent called the IRD that is tied to our Tavistock Institute. Tavistock actually does research for the CIA's CDU unit. Yeah. So their main purpose is to fuel the fires, yeah, so to speak, on both sides. But to turn heat up on one, turn it down on the other, vice versa, until they get to a point where they can get them to a level playing field where they'll clash. Yeah. It'll look natural as well. There may be a few anomalies here and there. Yeah. Prime example is Charlie Kirk. That young lad is a patsy, yeah, but not in the way that many people think. Intel, the Intel side, that I call the DIC, the Deception and Industrial Complex, knew that was going to happen. In fact, instigated it in a way, yeah, pushed that lad into doing it. Willie Tepesh did the same thing to Thomas Crooks. They needed Crooks in that area at that time to use as a patsy, and they used Tepesh to do it. When he infiltrated my Telegram group, my chat page, he was pushing a very pro-Nazi sort of agenda, skirting the lines between what is legal and illegal to say in the UK, whilst at the same time knowing exactly what to say to try and befriend me. Now I've had a habit on my page to take on what I perceive as Intel infiltrators on my page to learn from, because I'm slightly masochistic like that, I suppose, in a way. But they do give you a good idea of what goes on. I've learnt a lot from doing that, a heck of a lot. And these people have turned out to be very much Intel psychological warfare operators, one of which being that Willie Tepesh. That's how I knew who he was. I knew what he was before he even knew he'd been figured out and made, yeah, which is when he left my page. Once he realised, oh shit, I've been sussed, he was gone. This was shortly before Buck. The reason why I'm telling you this, one of which is your trust of Joe Kent, You should really avoid that guy like the plague. Well, I say that. What I mean is, do not trust the guy, right? Listen to what he says by all means, because you'll learn a heck of a lot. But take it with a pinch of salt, yeah? Whatever you do, don't befriend him if you ever talk to him, because I guarantee you now he will be very interested in talking to you. Same way that Ian Carroll is very interested in talking to you. Same way that Tucker Carlson is about to be, or already has been, very interested in talking to you. The mistakes, you were going through all the mistakes that Ian Carroll made all the way through that interview, and to be fair, that's a fantastic body of work that you've done there. But you've missed out one crucial component, and that is Ian Carroll is a CIA asset, is a propagandist, a propaganda asset, PSYWAR asset. I know this for a fact, right? I'm going to give you some simple ways of finding out why. During his Joe Rogan interview, in fact before that I was actually in contact with Ian Carroll. We had quite a few email conversations, a bit like what me and you had. We were talking about the PSYWAR family. Now if you don't know who the PSYWAR family is, don't worry about it. It's something for another time. Both he and Sam Tripoli were warned off talking about this guy, which is when things changed with Ian Carroll. Now, I don't think Ian was warned. I think he was just using that as an angle to get to Sam Tripoli, because his demeanour changed like that and he stopped really talking to me, which I found odd. Anyway, he went on Joe Rogan and he started talking about his father. Now, you'll know about the anti-war movement. I'm sure you do. That preceded the hippie movement, yeah? In the 60s. The late 60s, early 70s, mid 70s, yeah? They were very religious, religiously motivated by the religious leadership that were pushing these protesters into that position. The entirety, bar none, of those religious leaders that were running those protest movements, all of them were CIA. Not assets, CIA case officers, posing as clergy. The CIA's use and infiltration and organisation of the US's religious sort of belt, yeah, or religious sector, is well documented. Something they've admitted to a good few times. The last time was in 1996, I think it was, during a Senate Select Committee where they had to basically detail what they've been doing. That and journalism. Everyone's heard of Mockingbird. Not many people know about the actual CIA's involvement within the clergy. This is something that Candace Owens has tried to manipulate to fit her agenda, right? What she says, 90% of it is absolute garbage, right? But they have had a hand in it. Ian Carroll was on Joe Rogan talking about this movement, and he said, he turned around and he said that there was all these religious leaders and everything else, and his dad was one of them. You'll see here.
And also to see what they can get away with, they can do with
I
this
suspect
acid.
I mean, to me, the big question is, that seems like the first, like for sure that's going on, right?
Yeah.
Is to co-opt the hippie. I mean, first, the hippie movement probably was to co-opt the anti-war movement that was pretty buttoned up. Like,
Yes.
I suspect that LSD did not just escape the lab. I suspect they were like, quick, turn all these kids into crazy hippies. Like, try this out, try this out, try this out.
Really?
Yeah. So
Why do you think
check this
that?
out. Have you read Strange Scenes Inside Laurel Canyon?
I started to read it. I have not finished it.
I mean, even just
But
the
it's
first chapter, right?
nuts.
So if you take that book's premise, it's basically that before the hippie movement, there was a very powerful organized anti-war movement led by a bunch of Quakers, a bunch of black activists, a bunch of, like, my dad was one of them. And it was
a bunch of Quakers, a bunch of black activists, a bunch of, like, my dad was one of them. And it was, my dad was one of them. Like, my dad was one of them. And it was, my dad was one of them. Like, my dad was one of them. And it was, my dad was one of them. And it was
not this hippie fringe thing. It was a very...
Now, as soon as he said that, my ears pricked. So I was like, what? Do you mean your dad was one of them? He let something slip there that was major, and he didn't realise what he let slip. Like I said, I knew for a fact every single one of those religious leaders that were involved in those movements, in those religious anti-war protest movements, were CIA case officers. So then I started looking into his family, because that was the next port of call. I thought, well, why is this? What's going on? His dad must be CIA, so why? Well, it gets interesting from here on in. The Carroll family, the Irish Carroll family, he's already said he was Irish, he's already said he was Catholic, right? The Carroll family were instrumental in the founding of the US. Charles Carroll, his signature, his brothers, I think, John Carroll, their signatures are on the Declaration of Independence. Charles Carroll was a very well known, but also still very well respected Catholic Jesuit priest. His brother, John, was Jesuit educated, but also part of the military. He was very close with George Washington. Now, off the top of my head, I can't remember if he was a colonel or a general, but he was very high ranking and very close to Washington. So to say his family are elitist is an understatement, right? They are the consummate US elite family. Every member of the Carroll family from that point has had two traditional professions, one of which is the clergy. As long as it was Christian, it didn't matter, right? They were Jesuit trained. Jesuits, everyone knows, they infiltrate every sort of religious faction, right? But clergy is one of them, religious. The other is military, which also folds in with intelligence work. Every single one of them have been. One of them, I don't know if you've heard of the family. It's a prayer group that every single US president has, well, since at least the 1940s, has been involved in. Yeah? They're meant to be evangelical Christians, but they're every sort of flavour of Christian you can imagine, but mainly Catholic. The head of the DIA at the time, whose name escapes me at the moment, I'll put it across the bottom, he was part of the Carroll family. He was the uncle of Ian Carroll's father. Military man. DIA, part of the family. The family, not his family, but obviously he's part of his family, but the family. He's also involved with the Collins elite. Now, this is, again, very conspiratorial. You don't need to get into this stuff. Just concentrate on who Ian Carroll is. He's come out of nowhere. Very prominent. Very quickly elevated. Almost overnight. This doesn't happen. I don't care who you are. This doesn't happen. Not that fast. Not in the way that Ian Carroll was. He wasn't lucky. It's not organic, it's engineered. His associate, Candace Owens, Candace Owens is married to George Farmer. George Farmer is Lord Michael Farmer's son. He's a hereditary peer in the UK. He was also president of the Bullingdon Club at one point and was still is best friends with Nathan Rothschild Jr., who he was at Bullingdon with. Bullingdon is the UK equivalent of Skull and Bones. It has had pretty much every single UK Prime Minister as a member, or its equivalent over at Cambridge, one or the other. He's also heavily tied with MI6. You can tell this through his friendship with John Mappin. John Mappin, the Scientologist, is also an MI6 op. Yeah? Candace Owens is tied with both of those and friends with Ian Carroll. Candace Owens is herself a CIA asset. Both of them are a propaganda duo. Because Candace also has ties to Voice of America, the CIA's international media propaganda unit. I've forgotten its name now. Tucker's dad headed it.
Do you guys know who Candace Owens is? Well, this account online, DD Geopolitics, thinks they know. The construction of Candace Owens. Earlier this year, we reported that Candace Owens was introduced to her husband, George Farmer, by Allie Hanley, wife of William Lee Hanley Jr., who ran the CIA's media arm, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I'm just reading tweets. I'm just reading posts. I can neither confirm nor deny. I'm just asking questions. The CPB is essentially the domestic version of Voice of America, the CIA's international media arm, which was ran by Tucker Carlson's dad. Lee Hanley, who ran the CPB under the Reagan administration, was also best friends and a donor to CIA Director Porter Goss. Tucker's dad, Dick Carlson, not only ran Voice of America, but he became the CEO of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in 1992, just a few years after Lee Hanley ran it. What a small world Candace and Tucker have been a part of. We got confirmation from TPOSA insiders that Allie Hanley was part of introducing Owens and Farmer in 2018 at a Turning Point UK event. Parler CEO and Turning Point UK Chairman George Farmer then proposed to her in a very strange way over FaceTime 17 days later. The first thing Lee Hanley's obituary remembers him for is how strongly of a believer in Judeo-Christian values he was, and then Allie Hanley sets Owens up with the son of Lord Michael Farmer, the Christian deputy chair for the Council for Christians and Jews. Weird. According to its website, the Council for Christians and Jews is the United Kingdom's leading forum for Christian-Jewish engagement. And George Farmer's House of Lords, dad, Michael Farmer, runs it. It's also important to remember that Republican billionaire Rebecca Mercer co-founded Parler, for which George Farmer was the CEO of. Mercer is also a major donor to J.D. Vance's Rockbridge Network and an investor in 1789 Capital, which funds both Tucker Carlson and Rockbridge. Candace Owens may be the greatest grifter in conservative history. In 2017, she claimed, "I became a conservative overnight. I realized liberals were the real racists." Strangely, it was also 2017 when she was first promoted by Israeli agency Explore Talent. I'm just reading news. I don't believe that shit. That ain't real.
Ali Landry, her husband, was the president of that same company, who was also a good friend with Candace Owens. Those two are a duo. That's why they mirror each other. Don't mirror each other. They complement each other all the time. Yeah. They did even before they supposedly met up. Yeah. And Candace took him on. Fuck off. Candy is the link between MI6 and CIA. Yeah, she's part of the propaganda sort of unit that comes out of that same Gladio program, that tie between them both. She's an asset of both the CIA and MI6. Ian Carroll wasn't an accident. It wasn't an accident. He was placed and boosted. And his following was engineered to make it look organic, but it was never organic. Tucker, everyone knows about Tucker's dad being CIA. Yeah, again, Voice of America, and the company that was born out of that, whose name I can't remember. Tucker is also CIA. Putin let something slip when he met him for that interview. He said, you once applied for the CIA, but didn't get in. And he said that with a wry smile, meaning, I know you got in, but I know you've been sheep dipped in a way. Not completely sheep dipped, obviously. They couldn't really do that. But in a way he has, yeah. His involvement with the CIA has been. So that again let things slip about Tucker. And his desperation to try and get people to stop looking in his direction. Yeah, when it comes to his father's involvement with the CIA. Tucker is a case officer, he's a CIA case officer, he's posing as a journalist. He has two assets under his wing, one of which is Ian Carroll, the other is Candace Owens. And his higher up is Joe Kent. Joe Kent is part of the Special Activities Centre, yeah, the CIA, everyone knows that. He did 11 tours with them. He never left. It's something that not a lot of people realise. That kind of unit, you can't leave. Once you're company, you're always company. It's as simple as that. The Special Activities Centre, like I said, is a special operations unit, yeah, military special operations unit, run by and commanded by the intel community. Mainly civilian intel community, that being CIA. E-Squadron is the same in the UK. That's run by MI6. It's an MI6 unit. This makes them very special because everything is off the books what they do. Everything is above, way above top secret. Yeah. Their official mandate, yeah, operational mandate, is intel gathering. Yeah. But they also say on the E-Squadron one, which is brilliant, false flag operations. It's a specialisation. They also do psychological warfare operations, which are tied again to the false flags. Basically everything to do with the intel world, but in the field, deep in the field, behind enemy lines. These have been turned inward. Against the US. And against you, my friend. Ian Carroll going on Tucker, talking about you quite a lot. And the guy before him 6 months later, his name, he has a similar name to yours, yeah, Cullen, I think it is. His mentioning of you on Tucker's show was to bring more light to you so they could then discredit whatever you are putting out. Those mistakes that Ian Carroll was making weren't mistakes. They were deliberate. I'm sure you know how these ops work, mate, yeah? Little seeds of doubt here and there. little mistakes here and there that don't quite add up, all of which mount up and discredit the rest of whatever you're saying. That's what they're doing. Look at the placement of where those mistakes are. What he's talking about, where those mistakes are. How significant are they to the rest of your theory? Do they cast out on any other areas? The answer to all of that is yes, most definitely. Because of the size of Ian Carroll's following, because of the size of Tucker Carlson's following, they're able to make this the dominant idea within people's minds. So when people sort of disseminate those mistakes as fact, it becomes the leading narrative. This is all to do with narrative control. Not a lot of people know how this works or understand how this works. But these little seeds are the entryway to discrediting everything else that comes behind it. Especially when the only leading theory, because it's the only real theory and an actual account of the event, is prominent. That's when they start doing stuff like this. And this is the speciality of the CDU in the US and the IRD in the UK. And Tucker and Carroll are well versed in this. Be very careful, Mr. Cullen. Be very careful. They want you to, they're trying to draw you in to testify at Congress or to go on Tucker's show for an interview. This will end it will end one of two ways, or possibly even both. Same goes with Ian Carroll. They're going to use it to make you look like a kook, to discredit whatever you say, or to draw you in so they can take you out, or both. Get yourself some insurance. I know you know what I'm talking about, and I have a strong suspicion you already have. Ensure that insurance is tightly held. And completely hidden from view. It's the only reason why I'm still alive. And I dare say it's probably the only reason why you are. We're both in a position where we can say a certain amount, where we have to be restrained. You're a good man, John. But Ian Carroll, Tucker Carlson, Joe Kent, listen to what they say by all means. As I always say myself, 95% truth, 10% lies. These people tell you more truth than they do lies, because it gets them believed more, gets their lives believed more, and gets them trusted more. And these people are masters at that craft. And I think this is where you may have a tiny bit of naivety, where you have a severe lack of understanding. I don't mean any disrespect, but this game isn't something you've ever played before. These people aren't anyone you've ever been up against before. and I have a great concern for your safety. Right, so does my cat, apparently. Bitch, get out of the way. Like I said, I trust you, John. You may not remember me. Look into my background. I've not hidden anything. It's been full transparency from me. Look back on the past conversations if you still got them. You'll remember who I am. But I'm asking you to trust me. You're in very dangerous territory. And the skills, the talent, the information that you hold and provide is extremely valuable to how not only the US but the rest of the Western world will continue to go. If you're taking out the game, I think we're fucking screwed. I've got plenty of information that you really should have a look at. I've left a link in the description below, my friend, to a group that I have on Telegram that is just full of information just on these subjects alone. Please go and have a look, have a look through it. Pardon me, you'll likely see what I mean.